Imagine this. You're a company working with, like, ultra-sensitive financial data, right? And it has to be, like, locked down tight.
Yeah.
But you also need that flexibility, that scalability of the cloud. It's a tough one, isn't it?
It's a classic balancing act: security versus the advantages of the cloud. That's where these Azure Dedicated Hosts come in. They offer a really interesting solution.
Okay, now you've got my attention. We're talking more than just renting some cloud space here. This is like having your own private island in the Azure archipelago.
That's a great analogy. With dedicated hosts, you're essentially renting an entire physical server, in one of Microsoft's data centers, dedicated solely to your applications. No sharing, no noisy neighbors, just your workloads. You have complete control.
Now that's what I call elbow room.
Ah.
But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Why would a company choose this route? What makes dedicated hosts worth the investment?
It boils down to three key advantages: cost optimization, enhanced reliability, and Fort Knox level security. Let's unpack those.
Yeah, let's start with cost. Because let's be real, saving money is always a good thing, especially in the cloud.
Absolutely. Now, renting an entire server, on the face of it, seems more expensive than just using shared resources.
Right, it seems counterintuitive.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Consider those Windows and SQL Server licenses many companies already have. With Azure Hybrid Benefit, you can bring those licenses over to Azure and apply them to your dedicated hosts. This can actually lead to really significant cost savings.
Wow, so it's like a BYOB situation, but for software licenses.
You got it. And for businesses running a lot of Windows or SQL Server, those savings add up quickly. But cost is only part of the story. Let's talk reliability.
Okay, because downtime is a killer, especially for businesses that need those apps up 24/7.
Absolutely. Imagine you're running a mission-critical e-commerce app and bam, Azure needs to do some planned maintenance. You're left in a tough spot.
Yeah, that's lost revenue, frustrated customers.
Yeah,
Not good.
exactly. With dedicated hosts, you have near total control over these maintenance events. Azure gives you this rolling 35-day window to apply updates on your schedule.
So no more surprise, we're updating your servers now.
Exactly. You're in the driver's seat. You decide when those updates happen, minimizing any disruption. It's about maintaining that smooth, uninterrupted operation.
That sounds like a huge win for businesses with those super time-sensitive applications. Okay, but let's switch gears to security. In today's world, data breaches are a huge concern. How do dedicated hosts stack up?
They really shine here. Think of it like this. In a shared cloud environment, your data is, well, it's like a valuable painting in a museum. It's surrounded by other artwork, protected by the same security.
Right, but if someone gets past those defenses, they could access data that's not even theirs.
Precisely. With dedicated hosts, you're taking that painting and putting it in its own vault. That's the level of security we're talking about. Your data is on a physically isolated server. No other customer data is anywhere near it.
It's like having your own Fort Knox in the cloud.
Exactly. And for businesses dealing with super sensitive info, especially those in heavily regulated industries, healthcare, finance this level of isolation is essential for compliance.
Okay, so dedicated hosts sound like a dream for security. But what about performance? Renting that whole server, that's got to mean smoother sailing, faster apps, right?
We're right on the money. Imagine. You're in a packed coffee shop sharing Wi-Fi with a ton of people. Everyone's downloading, streaming, the works. The connection crawls, right?
The dreaded internet traffic jam. Been there.
Exactly. Dedicated hosts, it's like having that whole coffee shop's Wi-Fi to yourself. No competing for bandwidth, just pure performance.
My applications, sipping lattes, enjoying the quiet, running super fast. I like it.
That's the idea. Especially good for workloads that need serious horsepower, specific memory, storage needs, real-time data processing, that sort of thing.
Like a dedicated lane on the information superhighway. No more getting stuck in the slow lane. But with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Absolutely. You're not just renting here, you're essentially managing a little piece of a data center. You gotta understand the layout.
So planning for redundancy, making sure if something goes wrong, my apps are still good.
Exactly. It's like building a house. You wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, one problem with the foundation, and the whole place goes down.
No way. Okay, I like where you're going with this. How do we build that resilience, that fault tolerance with dedicated hosts?
That's where Azure availability zones come in, like having separate power grids for your house. Each zone, physically isolated within an Azure region, own power, cooling, network, the whole deal.
So if one zone goes down, the others keep the lights on, my apps keep running.
You got it. Now, when you create a host group in Azure, think of it like buying land in one of these zones. All the hosts in that group, They'll live in that zone.
Makes sense. So for real redundancy, I shouldn't put all my dedicated hosts in the same availability zone.
Exactly. Like that house analogy, right? You want backup generators, a second water source, just in case. In Azure, you spread your hosts across multiple host groups, each one in a different availability zone. One zone has an outage, no problem. Your apps fail over to the hosts in the other zones, minimizes downtime, everything keeps running smoothly.
So availability zones, like having a backup house on standby, just in case. Huh. I'm liking this whole setup more and more.
That's the idea, but wait, there's more to this fortress. Remember fault domains?
Right, those sounded important. Like
Yep.
extra support beams in a house for stability.
Perfect way to put it. They give you another layer of redundancy, but within a single availability zone. Separate groupings of servers, infrastructure, physically distinct, even in the same zone.
So like different circuit breakers in your house. One trips, the others stay on.
Exactly. Creating a host group. You choose how many fault domains. Azure spreads your dedicated hosts across them evenly.
Okay, let me get this straight. Multiple availability zones, plus multiple fault domains in each one. I spread my hosts across this whole thing. We're talking a digital fortress here.
You got it. Multiple layers of backup, redundancy. Your apps can withstand almost anything.
Now that's peace of mind. All this talk about availability, redundancy makes me think. Any limitations on picking the right size, the right type of dedicated host?
Crucial point. It's all about getting the right fit. Think about going to a tailor for a suit. You wouldn't just say, give me a suit. You'd talk measurements, style, what you need it for, right?
Right, you got to find what fits you perfectly.
Exactly. With dedicated hosts, you've got these different SKUs. Each one has its own resources, CPU, memory, storage. Choosing the fabric and the cut of your suit, it's got to fit your needs and your budget.
So I need to do my homework, figure out what my apps need without going overboard,
Yeah.
ending up with a server that's way too powerful.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. You also need to think about the types of virtual machines you'll be running on these hosts.
Right, we haven't really gotten into that yet. It's like choosing the right shirt and tie to go with that custom-tailored suit.
You got it. Each dedicated host Hue, it supports certain VM series and types. You can't just pick any VM and assume it'll work.
Like making sure those stylish shoes actually fit your feet.
You're getting it. Just like a good suit, you can't easily change the size or type of a dedicated host once it's set up. So planning is key. Understand those VM requirements, then choose the dedicated host SKU that fits perfectly.
Choosing a dedicated host is like putting together a whole outfit. But even the best outfits need upkeep, right?
Yeah.
How does Azure handle that for these servers?
That's where Azure's proactive monitoring and management come in. Like having expert tailors constantly checking your suit, seams are strong, fabric's clean, everything's perfect.
Reassuring. It's not like I'm on my own with this server.
Not at all. Azure's always monitoring your dedicated hosts, health, performance, the works. They have a system, like a health checkup, to categorize them.
What are those health statuses? What do they actually mean?
So you have host available, the best case scenario, everything's running great. Then there's host under investigation. Azure sees something potentially wrong and is checking it out. If they figure out a host is beyond repair, you might see host pending deallocate. And then once it's out of rotation, it'll be host deallocated.
So they're on top of it, making sure everything's good. But what if a host does have a problem? Does Azure just send an alert and say, good luck?
Not quite. They have host service healing, like having on-call tailors ready to fix any rips or tears in your suit.
Okay, now that's interesting. Tell me more about this service healing.
Say a host has problems, the node, network, even software glitches, Azure can try to fix it automatically. They migrate any running VMs on that host to a healthy one.
So they move my apps to a backup server. I don't have to do anything.
Exactly. VMs are running on the new host. The problem one is gone.
That's incredibly convenient. But there's got to be a catch. Like maybe a little downtime during that move.
You're right. A few seconds, maybe minutes as they move and restart. A quick change of clothes, a minor inconvenience to keep things running smoothly.
I can live with that. Small price to pay for Azure fixing things automatically.
Exactly. But some users have super strict rules, compliance stuff. They need that VM tied to the exact hardware, like their suit has to be tailored perfectly and never touched again. There's an option to disable the service healing.
Really? That level of control.
Absolutely. Flexibility for specific needs, but it's important to understand what that means.
Right, you're saying I'll handle any wardrobe malfunctions myself.
You got it. If a host has issues and it can't heal, it'll go to host pending deallocate and eventually get removed. The user would have to manually set up a new dedicated host and move their VMs over.
So it's convenience versus complete granular control.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance for your apps and what your rules are.
This is amazing. We've gone from dedicated hosts 101 to all these layers, availability, redundancy, even self-healing.
We've built a secure, resilient digital fortress, brick by dedicated brick, and we've got a system to keep those bricks strong.
I like that. But we're not done yet. When we come back, we'll tackle those frequently asked questions, find those hidden gems, and leave you with some final things to think about. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back. We've spent this whole time building this digital fortress, right? Dedicated hosts, all that redundancy, even that self-healing system.
It's been quite a journey, from the foundations to all those little details.
And now it's time for those burning questions, those what-if scenarios. Ready to get into the weeds a little?
Let's do it. Time to shed some light on those finer points.
Okay, perfect. So let's say I've got this VM, it's on my dedicated host, everything's humming along, but I need to move it. Different host, maybe free up some space, maybe I'm changing things up. Can I just do a live migration like with a regular Azure VM?
That's a really important question, and there's a key difference here. Live migration, as of today, isn't supported on dedicated hosts.
Okay, so it's not as easy as drag and drop to a new host.
Not quite. You'd need to stop the VM, move, it could be another dedicated host, could even be a regular VM, and then start it back up again.
So more manual, but doable.
Exactly. Just something to keep in mind, especially for applications where downtime is a big no-no.
Good to know. Now, let's say I'm feeling a little adventurous. Can I run different types of VMs on the same dedicated host? Like I've got some DSV3s for the heavy lifting, maybe some SE3s for more general tasks. Can I mix and match?
Unfortunately, that's where Azure puts its foot down. You can only run VMs from the same family as your dedicated host.
Okay, so no mixing those DSV3s and SV3s on one host. Got it. But what about different sizes within the same family? That allowed.
Absolutely. As long as they're in the same family as your host and you have the capacity, mix away.
Like a tailor-made suit. But I can choose different shirts and ties as long as they go with the overall look.
You got it. It's all about finding that balance, specialization and flexibility.
Okay, geek question here. When we talk dedicated hosts, it's all about the server ranking. But the hardware itself, can I choose what generation of CPU, those kind of components my host uses?
Absolutely. It's a good question. It's important. When you pick that dedicated host CU, you're not just picking size. You're choosing a hardware type. Each one maps to a specific generation.
So if I need the newest stuff,
Yeah.
I got to dig into those SKUs and make sure I'm getting the right hardware.
Exactly. Different generations,
Yeah.
different performance, features, even pricing sometimes.
Yeah.
Match your needs to what's out there.
Got it. Now let's talk quotas for a sec. We've established Azure's got plenty of capacity, but are there limits on how many dedicated hosts I can spin up in a region?
It's something to think about, especially as you scale up. There are actually two types of quotas.
Two. Now I'm intrigued.
So first, there's your dedicated host vCPU quota. Basically, how many total virtual CPUs you can have across all your hosts in a region.
Like saying this many lanes on your dedicated highway, no more.
You got it. Default's 3,000 vCPUs per region, which is pretty generous. Unless you're building some crazy cloud supercomputer, you'll probably be fine.
Okay, that's good to know. But you said two quotas. What's the other one?
This one's a bit more specific. It's the VM size family quota. Limits how many vCPUs from a certain VM series you can use in a region, even on dedicated hosts.
So even if I've got vCPU quota to spare, I might hit a limit on how many, say, DSV3 vCPUs I can use specifically.
Precisely. Azure's way of keeping things fair across all the VM types.
So if I hit that family quota, I need to ask Azure for more.
Exactly. But don't worry, requesting those increases is easy right there in the Azure portal.
Okay, good to know. All right, last but definitely not least, pricing. We've danced around it, but how does billing actually work with dedicated hosts?
Sure. With dedicated hosts, you're paying a flat fee. Per host, per month. The exact cost depends what size is it, what type, which region is it in.
So bigger, more powerful host in a pricier region, that's going to be more expensive.
Of course. But here's the thing. You're paying for that whole host, even if you don't have a ton of VMs running on it.
Like renting that whole coffee shop, even if you're the only one there sometimes.
Precisely. That's why getting the size right is key.
Makes sense. Any other costs to keep in mind besides that flat fee?
The usual stuff, software licenses, storage, network usage, all billed separately. But the VMs themselves, They don't have compute charges while they're on that dedicated host.
So that's where the savings can really kick in, especially with that Azure hybrid benefit, bringing your own licenses.
Absolutely. And if you want predictable costs, Azure's got reserved instances for dedicated hosts, just like other resources. Pre-book that coffee shop, get a discount.
Now, that's a deep dive.
We've covered a lot, the core ideas, the little details, everything.
We went from what dedicated hosts are to how they fit into Azure, how to make them resilient, even how to optimize costs and performance.
And if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Dedicated hosts give you incredible control.
Totally. They're not for everyone, but for specific needs, strict security, those high-performance apps, even just wanting full control of your cloud environment, dedicated hosts can be a total game changer.
They're this really interesting mix of dedicated and cloud-native tech. Really exciting to see where it goes from here.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have.
It's been a pleasure.
But keep in mind, the learning doesn't stop here. There's a whole world of cloud knowledge out there.
Keep exploring, keep experimenting, keep asking those questions.
Until next time on the Deep Dive.